Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Nichole Berlie at our NewsNation headquarters in Chicago. And we start this Wednesday with the United States closely watching a fleet of Russian warships, which are traveling off the coast of Florida, heading for Cuba. The Pentagon deploying Navy vessels in a sign of readiness as that Russian fleet entered the Havana Harbor. It marks the largest show of force by Russia so close to the continental U.S. in years. And this all as tensions remain high over the war in Ukraine and support from Western countries. Let's bring in correspondent Kelly Meyer live for us at the Pentagon. So, Kelly, what is the latest there at the Pentagon?
Yeah, Nichole, and I was just catching up with some of the officials here at the Pentagon, telling us that this isn't quite that unusual. But as you mentioned just there, this is happening during a time when we are supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia, as President Biden is taking off for the G7 summit in Italy to meet with world leaders. So this is coming at an interesting time. But this has happened in previous administrations. But this could be the first time it's happening during this active war between Russia and Ukraine, and potentially the first time happening during the Biden administration. So this is something that the Pentagon is watching very closely. We are waiting for an update from them in the next hour or so. This is as the U.S. is tracking those Russian warships as they are just 100 miles away from the Florida coast. So it's a move here that could be echoing of the Cold War era, and it could be seen as Russia flexing its military muscles. As we said, President Biden is taking off for that overseas trip with world leaders. Russian President Vladimir Putin is not on that guest list. So this is as the Russian Navy ships, they moved in just this morning to the Havana Harbor. The first ship was a fuel ship and then a tug. The Russian Navy ship, as well as a nuclear-powered submarine, waited offshore and arrived by mid-morning. Now, Cuba says this visit is standard practice, but Havana is just 100 miles from Key West. That's home to a U.S. naval air station. The U.S. Navy tracking those Russian vessels and deploying air assets to circle overhead. We actually just got this statement in from the Pentagon here, essentially saying that they also sent the U.S. Navy 2nd Fleet, 4th Fleet, U.S. Coast Guard in the Atlantic area, and Canadian Joint Task Force, all there conducting routine operations throughout the Atlantic, and they're going to continue monitoring this situation, Nichole.
All right, so Kelly, you mentioned the president there. What is the White House saying about all of this?
Yeah, so again, this is something that the White House is watching very closely. As we said, President Biden taking off for that meeting with world leaders. And he's actually set, we're learning, to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky on Thursday on the sidelines of the G7. They're going to hold a press conference as well. We're also learning that they will be announcing a new security agreement with Ukraine tomorrow. So this all coming as the president is encouraging world leaders to continue to stand up to Russia, as we're seeing Russia now entering the Caribbean, near going into Cuba, and the U.S. Navy monitoring this very closely, but saying right now it poses no threat.
All right,
Cool.
Kelly Meyer live for us there at the Pentagon. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.